This video is not intended for children.
Hello, everyone. Our topic this week was requested by Joseph Sepulver, Yixel, and Brown-Winged Angel. We'll be going over the Chozo for the Metroid franchise. Minor spoilers for some of the games and comics ahead.
So the first thing to know about the Chozo is that there is really very little information on them. Most of the hard cultural information comes from the more recent Metroid Prime series, as well as a manga initially published in 2003, around the time the Metroid Prime games were being released. The Chozo are essentially Metroid's version of that ancient, incredibly advanced race that have left ruins and/or goodies behind, but have vanished without a trace. The Chozo are unique in the annals of such species, though, in that they have vanished fairly recently. We'll get to the details of that in a bit. The Chozo are an avian species, that is, they're bipedal bird people, though they appear to be covered as much in armored plating as they are in feathers. We don't know exactly how old the Chozo people are, but the earliest mention of them we can find dates back to about 1500 years before the games begin. And one note of flavor text mentions that their civilization took millennia to build, so we can infer they are even older than that.
In the early days of their people, the Chozo were a proud and powerful warrior race. The Chozo were among the most technologically advanced species around, and they have held that title for a very, very long time. At some point, however, they began to eschew the art of war in favor of promoting peace and coexistence, maturing as a race such that as they traveled the stars and encountered other races, the Chozo fostered cooperation and alliances between numerous other races, while also freely sharing their technology and philosophies of balancing the old and the new, promoting peace instead of conquering or crushing those in their path as they might have in their race's younger days. It's even inferred that the Galactic Federation, a massive alliance of thousands of systems, had the groundwork for its founding laid by the Chozo as they fostered alliances between the various peoples as the years passed. Not only did they help forge peace, but they continued to pursue knowledge and enlightenment in all its forms, studying the universe around them both academically and spiritually. Relics of the Chozo's trek across the stars can be found on numerous planets. Abandoned research bases with sentient robot workers here, statues guarding secrets or holding artifacts of great power there, and so on.
Eventually, though, things reached a turning point for the Chozo, and as a species, they began to die out. The Chozo were blessed with an exceedingly long lifespan, and while it's technically never established as to how much of that long lifespan is natural and how much of it came from their advanced technology, we're going to presume it was a technological boom. The logical reason for this being, the Chozo didn't start dying out because of any war, plague, internal conflict, or any of those things you'd expect to be the end of such a society. It was the Chozo's very longevity that was killing them. As a species, the majority of them had grown too old to reproduce, and somehow the natural flow of reproduction in the proper age ranges wasn't enough to continuously revitalize the species, as is common in literally every species that continues to exist. This is why we assume it was a technological issue. Perhaps, for example, some byproduct of whatever process increased their lifespan also reduced the viability of Chozo conception, because it doesn't make any evolutionary sense for a species to naturally die off because they live a long time. That's like saying there are more 70-plus-year-old people alive in the world today than ever before, which is a fact. If this trend continues, we're all gonna die out. Ignoring the fact that people in the younger adult stages of life are still making babies at a significant pace, thus continuing the species. That being said, if you look at the numbers of how long we, humans as a species, are now living, and the age ranges that we are choosing to start families, and compare it to the past, we may actually see a connection to choosing not to have kids later and later, until maybe even we get to the point that the Chozo were, not wanting to start a family until it's biologically too late. For the record, all of that is conjecture on our part. However, whether it's accurate or not, the Chozo were collectively getting very old, could no longer reproduce, and were dying off as a species as a result. It's also worth noting that depictions of the Chozo during their culture's youth, when they still went to battle and such, indicates that they had wings at one point. They didn't by the fall of their culture, with one Chozo claiming they'd lost them long ago. We don't know if the Chozo somehow evolved to stop growing wings, or if the loss of flight was a side effect of most Chozo's advanced age.
This looming extinction led to a few problems, and is often the case with people or societies aware of and concerned over their own impending peril, the Chozo made a few mistakes while they tried to prepare. At this point in their society, the Chozo consider themselves nothing less than the guardians of life in the cosmos. They had spent hundreds, if not thousands of years brokering peace between all life they came across. But in more recent years, a dark threat had arisen. As life expanded across the stars, widening the sphere of the intergalactic world, more and more cultures were found and more space to hide and conduct misdeeds was discovered. So, as societies flourished, bands of space pirates came into existence as well, merging and becoming such a threat to the welfare of the Federation that entire martial arms of the government were created or mobilized specifically to counteract the terrorist plunderings of the space pirates. With these and other concerns, the Chozo worried about the state of affairs that known space would be left in once they were gone. To that end, they created the Mother Brain, an incredibly sophisticated biological supercomputer to help the Chozo in all of their efforts, propelling them further and faster than the Chozo themselves would have been able to proceed no matter what endeavor they engaged in. Eventually, she became an indispensable part of the operations of at least one of the remaining cells of Chozo.
This group of Chozo would also be responsible for the creation of the franchise's namesake, the Metroids. On a largely unknown planet at the edge of known space, the Chozo discovered an organism they dubbed the X-Parasites. X-Parasites were a terrifying organism native to the aforementioned planet. They had the capability of invading a host body and absorbing and devouring the DNA, memories, and anything else you can think of belonging to the host creature before bursting from the host's body, killing it, and then taking on the form of the host creature. But they didn't just take the previous host's shape. They retained the creature's memories, abilities, knowledge, and its appearance. The Chozo were horrified at the possible ramifications of these creatures being set loose upon the stars. Not only did the X-Parasites display some modicum of intelligence on their own, the simple reality was that if any other society discovered the X-Parasites, it was a very real possibility that the parasites' shape-shifting and memory retention abilities could be weaponized. And that's just assuming things went well for whatever duplicitous organization tried such a thing. Imagine some of those things getting out of containment and, say, replacing the scientists. Unfortunately, on top of all of this, the X-Parasites were also incredibly resilient, being functionally immune to most forms of conventional weaponry and forms of extermination.
So, the Chozo created the Metroids, a parasitic species of creature that subsisted upon the very life energy of other life forms. Similar to the X-Parasites, Metroids are extremely resilient, being resistant or immune to most conventional weaponry, though they are highly susceptible to the cold. They can also propagate very quickly, particularly when exposed to a certain type of radiation. Give them a food supply and radiation, and you've got a population explosion on your hands. Once created, the Chozo dropped the Metroids on the X-Parasites planet and watched to see what happened. The results? Wild success. Too wild a success, actually. The Metroids not only checked the X-Parasites' growth, they nearly drove them to extinction. Along with all other life on the planet. The Metroids literally killed almost everything else on the planet once they were dropped off. The Chozo considered that a problem, but unfortunately for them, they would end up having too many other things happening at once to be able to dedicate time to fixing the Metroid issue. Because while these studies were happening, the planet on which this group of Chozo lived was attacked by the space pirates. Now, the Chozo had given up on war long ago. As such, they had no offensive weaponry, guards, or other lethal defenses in place. What they did have was an incredibly powerful planetary shielding system. But these pirates had stopped being mere raiders long ago. They had access to advanced and powerful weaponry. As such, they blew through the Chozo's planetary defense shielding and raided the planet. Though the end result was unexpected. Mother Brain, that biological supercomputer the Chozo built, would end up gaining control of the space pirates and becoming their leader for years to come. Because, as so often happens with wildly powerful AI, Mother Brain had come to the conclusion that her mortal creators were flawed, and in her defense, in her case, dying out. And as such, it was up to her to save known space, by essentially burning it down, starting over again, and ruling everything. And as a quick aside, since she helped create the Metroids, she knew full well their capabilities and weaponized them against the rest of known life. Yay. The Chozo from that planet escaped with the help of what some would call another creation of theirs, Samus Aran, the protagonist of the Metroid series.
The only other group of Chozo we have hard information on ended their story in a very different way, and a few decades before the incidents we've just described. In the Metroid Prime games, the player visits a planet of Chozo naturalists. As their species began to die out, this group of Chozo, and based upon in-game information, presumably enough Chozo to populate a handful of other planets, set aside their technological advancement in favor of spiritually connecting with the natural world, hoping to find new insights they would never have been able to under a microscope. What's more, they succeeded, attuning their spiritual senses to something. Whether it be the world, the universe, or simply tapping into the unexplored powers native to the Chozo, granting them glimpses into the past and future. In fact, they saw the source of their impending doom, though they didn't have enough experience interpreting the visions to understand what they saw until it was too late. That doom came in the form of a meteor-like object smashing into their planet. The meteor wasn't much of a problem, but the substance it was laced with, Phazon, was. Phazon is essentially radioactive cancer. It infests and kills everything, along with doing a few other unpleasant things, and it proceeded to do just that, killing or horribly mutating all life on the planet, as well as the planet itself. Even the Chozo were not immune, with those killed by the Phazon finding their very souls corrupted and trapped there on the planet, angrily and jealously guarding what was once their home. Those who survived returned to their technological ways, using every method in their power to seal away the source of the Phazon. They succeeded, but determined they were not up to the task of eradicating the Phazon contamination from the planet, and instead left weapons and artifacts in place for a savior that they believed, or possibly saw with their future sight, would one day arrive on the planet.
That savior was the Chozo's last and greatest gift to the stars, Samus. Samus began life as just another human. However, at a young age, she was orphaned when a band of space pirates destroyed her home. The same band of space pirates that would later fall under Mother Brain's control. She was taken in by the Chozo, infused with Chozo DNA, granting her strength, dexterity, and physical resilience well above the norm for a human. Because we all think extra sturdy and strong when we think birds. There's no way the Chozo have hollow bones. Where all of the Chozo's other final efforts to safeguard life after they vanished failed, Samus was their one success. She was well trained by the Chozo, empowered with Chozo technology, weaponry, and genetic modification, and she was also a good person, and groomed to stay so by the Chozo. She protected others because she wanted to, because it was the right thing to do, and once we no longer see the Chozo, because she felt it was her duty. Eventually, she would solve the problem her adoptive parent species left behind, neutralizing the threats of Mother Brain, the Metroids, and handling that Phazon problem along with much, much more.
Samus is actually what makes the disappearance of the Chozo so interesting. The spiritual Chozo who dealt with the Phazon problem disappeared some 50 years before that game takes place. We don't have an exact age for Samus, but most indications are that those events took place a few decades before she was even born. It's also worth noting that what happened to that group is a little unclear, with some indications being that they simply abandoned the planet once the Phazon was sealed away, and others being that that group of Chozo ascended to a higher plane of existence. But the group of Chozo that fostered Samus was around much longer. As previously mentioned, we don't have an exact age for Samus, but most fan calculations, based upon a few hard dates we do have, place her around her mid-20s to mid-30s by the time of her chronologically most recent game. This is another one of those series where sequels jump around in this character's timeline a bit. We also know that Samus left the Chozo to join the Federation's police force around the age of 14, and that she served there from around the ages of 15 to 17. What makes this important is that event where the space pirates assaulted the Chozo world that housed Mother Brain. Remember how we said most of the Chozo escaped? Samus is the one that pulled them out of the fire, meaning she was somewhere between 15 and 17 when she did so. Most indications seem to be that she left the Federation police force shortly after that mission, so likely she was closer to 17. But we never hear about those Chozo thereafter, meaning that the most recently seen set of Chozo that we, the audience, have seen disappeared only, say, 15 or 20 years before the quote-unquote present day of Samus's latest game. Where did they go? What happened to them? No one knows. They might have finally died off, they might be in hiding, still studying the world and trying to do some good. Maybe they've ascended to a higher plane. Most fan consensuses seem to be that it's some combination of those and other possibilities. But still, to us, the most interesting thing about the Chozo's disappearance is still just how recently they vanished from the public eye.
And that's basically the Chozo. Ancient, highly advanced bird people from the Metroid franchise. We hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please leave us a like, and maybe share it with someone we know might like it. If you have ideas for videos you'd like to see in the future, do like Joseph Sepulver, Yixel, and Brown-Winged Angel, and let us know in the comments down below. If you'd like to see more videos from us in the future, be they lore, let's play, or other, go ahead and hit that subscribe button.
In the meantime, this has been
True Masters Morons,
signing off. Thanks for watching this video. If you'd like to see more like it, hit that subscribe orb.
To see our last Let's Play, click or tap the link on the right.
For our last lore video, click the link on the left.
Thank you to all of our patrons for making these videos possible.
Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.